Welcome, everyone. You are about to gain valuable insights into effectively engaging your workforce in cybersecurity. We have members from the Security Awareness Professionals community, that's SAPC. It's a group dedicated to helping cybersecurity awareness pros exchange ideas and best practices. Today's speakers work for respected organizations and they bring extensive experience in managing the same challenges that you face. But please note that they are not speaking on behalf of their employers. They're here to share personal insights from their own experiences. This lets us keep things informal, and it means we don't have to get legal involved. I'm Richard Warner, your host. I'm the CEO of AwareForce. We specialize in producing engaging content to help clients educate their employees about cybersecurity with videos, infographics, quizzes, and up-to-date cybersecurity news. We customize your newsletters and resources with your branding and colors and news about your initiatives, and even highlight your team members who contribute to cybersecurity efforts. Our clients enjoy a full library of cybersecurity content that covers everything and every topic you can imagine, along with a live metrics dashboard to track employee engagement. AwareForce is easy to use, cost effective, and it's a valuable addition to your cybersecurity strategy. If you'd like a sample, email us at cutrisk@awareforce.com. In this next hour, SAPC members are going to share best practices, insights into what works and maybe what doesn't, and they have actionable ideas for your organization. We'll also hear from the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is CISA. Let's dive in. Time to think about how cybersecurity professionals approach employee engagement in 2025. What's new? What's changing? Dustin Meadows from the Federal Reserve Bank is with us. Dustin, let's start with you. What's on your agenda for the new year?
It's down to awareness, making our users smarter, not just, protect the company data, but, show them how, these practices are used to protect your banking information or, your social network logins or your tax information. Show them that, by being, a better security steward in general, it's going to make us more secure too, because it's going to raise their security IQ overall. And by being smarter outside, they'll carry that inside.
Part of the empathy is understanding that different people have different levels of knowledge. And in my company, for instance, we have people who are very non-technical and they admit to being so. And we have developers and other people who are extremely technical. And we don't always have the resources to speak, to both. That we have to speak to both at the same time. And so the messages we're putting out there have to be crafted in a way where everyone can understand them, but we're not, speaking down to people who are highly technical, and really trying to hit that balance.
People kind of went from when I first started off 7 years ago to, that's information or cybersecurity's job. That's not part of my role. To I really think that people now understand that keeping data secure for companies is part of their role, right? So if they're the ones that clicked on a malicious link or opened a malicious attachment, it can get traced back to them, and then they realize, oh, I should have paid attention, right? I should have taken the training. I should have listened more. So now it's more of like a preventative measure because nobody wants to be that person that gave up the company data.
Paula West, Rockwell Automation, big manufacturing company. You deal with management and production, mission critical operations. Been a big year for you folks. What's coming in 25?
I spend a lot of time focused on that why, that psychology behind why is it important to protect myself? I know we put a ton of focus on, hey, here's tips and tricks that are going to keep you safe at home and keep your family safe. And the whole goal is that we're teaching people those things with the hope that that is pouring over into what they bring every day to the office. I always use the analogy of, I don't want you to put your seatbelt on in your company car. I want you to put your seatbelt on all the time. And you're going to keep yourself overall safe and keep us safe by doing that.
Anna Hauk, if you were going to describe the culture at your organization as it relates to employees in cyber, what have you learned is working?
The first word that comes to mind is openness. So it probably goes right along with like an operational change management. And I say that because things move so quick in this field. And so being on top of everything is unrealistic sometimes. So that openness to working and partnering with other teams, such as your marketing team or even other IT teams, they're the experts in that area. So being able to collaborate and work with them and get their ideas is something that even personally that I'm working on doing better because I don't know necessarily the best answer for a specific area.
Cassie, your style, your team's approach to business, what's working?
Not shaming people, right? We understand everybody has a role at work, meeting them where they're at. Understand what their function is and how they interact with people, and letting them know what red flags that they could look out for to better safeguard the work that they're doing, the company that they work for, or even if it's personal, like, should you be sending that file to someone? Is that link to pictures okay, safe to open? So just again, it's meeting people where they're at and making it a safe environment by not shaming people of, that's a dumb thought, or a CEO would never email you. So having compassion.
So I think one of the biggest things that I'm continually focusing on with the workforce is not only the simple things like don't click the link, think before you act. If you see something, say something, is really focused on changing behavior. So if we focused a long time on phishing, on don't click the link, we're shifting our language to talk about report it if you see something. Try to protect more than just yourself. And I think we all know that click number, that's just an in the moment. What was I doing? I mean, I've sent out test phishing campaigns and I've clicked the link because I'm moving too fast, right? I probably shouldn't admit that, but I have. But I think if we start to change the conversation to, if you see something, do something, and here's what you need to do. So here's how you report a phish. And you're not protecting yourself, just you're protecting yourself by deleting that phish without reporting it. But if you go ahead and report it, here's what happens behind the scenes. Now that's triggering something to say, hey, somebody reported this, might be suspicious. Let's pull it out of everyone's inbox until we can figure out what it is. So I feel like a lot of my communication to the workforce is focused on that. How do we change our behavior? And how do we stop and think when we see something? How do we slow down our thinking and we kind of switch our thinking to like, let's process this through and see, is this something we should act on? Is this out of the norm? Great. Put a pause on it. Don't react to any emergency language that's in the communication, and really step back to what is our process, and then how do we report it if it's an issue.
Be big on training users as soon as they come on board, quickly letting them know and notifying them of what they can expect once they come on board, providing them with screenshots. I like to meet with them one-on-one as soon as they come on board and show them stuff that I pull out from our quarantine and say, look, guys, we recently received this type of email. This is what you should expect. This is what you need to look out for. So that user can be knowledgeable and have that knowledge and knows what to look out for. Just especially because, like I said, human error is crucial. And the more you train the users, the more you try to find ways so they can get engaged and keep them interesting enough so they can stay and listen to what you're trying to show them. I think that's key. And rather than writing full-on emails, I think the key is always just finding tactics to catch your audience in a way where you keep them attentive for the first 5 minutes. I think that's huge, just in general when it comes to human training as well in cybersecurity.
Karen McPhee, one of the debates earlier this year was about how companies test employees for phishing. Do gotcha phishing exercises work? Do employees learn from it? Or does it send the wrong message that we're trying to get you? You mentioned to me that there's a type of phishing that you all don't do.
We're not going to go and say that it's something that people could fall victim to, such as, hey, here's a bonus. here's your bonus, click here to see how much and stuff like that, because that can impact people's livelihoods in relation to where they were going. And that to me doesn't actually teach them in relation to not click. It teaches them not to trust, and we need to be trust adversary. Like we need them to be a trusted advisor out there, as opposed to somebody that they can't actually trust and see.
What is that balance of the stick versus the carrot? And I know I've focused a lot on that cyber kill chain. Like if we look at, there's 12 steps in an attack. There's 12 points where an end user could stop and protect the organization. And so how do you change that conversation so that you're not saying, hey, you shouldn't click the link, to, gosh, yeah, we might accidentally click the link, or we might accidentally give information out and realize that it shouldn't have been out there. So as soon as that happens, here's where you report it, here's how you report it, here's the 911 for cyber within our organization. And talking about those stories, right? I think the more that we talk about incidents that have happened within our organization, we start to remove a lot of that shame, because I think that there's so much shame around, gosh, I fell for that and I shouldn't have done it, whether it's personal or whether it's organizational. So I think changing the conversation to talk about every single one of us can make a difference at any step through this process. And if we look at point one, step one is that initial contact, which might even be just social engineering, trying to get information to know who the right person to go to is. And we look at step 12 is where they're actually maybe redirecting money. There are 11 other steps before we get to step 12 that we can still change the course and protect our organization.
I mean, it's not just about telling employees what to do, it's telling a human what to do, what they should and shouldn't do at home. Because if they were compromised at home, how's that going to impact when they come to work, right? Or how's that going to impact their home life, their family? If their family has been compromised, I mean, they could be blackmailed, they could run into some kind of cyber attack, impersonation. So it's just like, not just from an employee standpoint, but how can I help you be your own household CISO?
Dennis Ligori, you took over the cybersecurity program at Carrier and you had to hit the ground running. The company was being acquired. And from what I'm hearing, that's something that might happen in a lot of industries in the upcoming year. Your team did a terrific job building a cybersecurity program with no time to lose. What did you learn from that?
I think the biggest, challenge is aligning with the business. Cyber security is often seen as, an expense. And, tools are not cheap. So as the prices of the tools go up, as the number of vendors, you have to constantly evaluate new vendors. It's whack-a-mole. The attacks still get through. That's our biggest concern, because when we have our enterprise defenders, at one point we were seeing about 70 to 80 phishing emails caught per day. And that tells us, we may need to make changes to our tool. We may need to make alterations. We're now down to about 40 to 50 emails caught per day, but that's still high. What does that tell us? Attackers design tools to evade, our security tools, right? They design the attacks to evade the tools. Credential phishing is big. Malware still makes it through. So you really need that human aspect. But that's the unknown, right? It's a white space opportunity, because many organizations see security awareness from compliance to a risk-based approach. Getting to that level of defense in depth, it's an additional 2 layers. One layer is before a person interacts, someone reports it. But then you get that final layer when your endpoint misses it, encouraging users to still report it, because if malware misses your endpoint, it can, download onto a user's device. And that's the most important step. Few companies realize that, right? They don't really see the value of security awareness. And I'm sure you also see that in the industry. It's not like security awareness teams are growing any larger, or security awareness budgets are growing any bigger. It's just hard to get security awareness tools approved beyond, a certain point.
In this webinar, we're looking forward to hearing about both successes and challenges that our guests face. We hope you'll feel comfortable sharing some stories, and rest assured, we're not going to quote you directly. Anna Hauk, would you like to start us off?
I'll give you a failure because there's tons of successes all the time, but when you roll out whatever frequency of training you have, and you keep it open for a select time, and then the way the logic was written for the training I had, it was to restart the training after X amount of time. But the same training, it re-enrolled everyone. And that happened to me on a Sunday night, US time. So everyone who was in the global organization, everywhere else, was getting all these emails and all these things. And I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Like, I can't stop these emails. All I can do is stop like what hasn't been sent. So it's just a reminder that like even people who work in the security field make mistakes, and that's how a lot of things happen. It's just general user error, and that was a total error on my fault for letting it lapse. Um, and it all got fixed and everything, but it was one of those things that I was like, this is like what it probably feels like for people when they click an email. Like it's just a total like, oops, I did that. I shouldn't have done that. How did I forget?
An oops didn't quite work the way it should have is we implemented, like a block on removable media devices and sending out a communication about removable media devices. The number of questions that I received around are my headphones, is that my AirPods, is that a removable media device? Is my keyboard, because these are things I plug in using the USB port. I think it's always kind of stepping back and trying to remember that as technologists, sometimes things we think are simple are not, and we need to figure out how do we explain those. So I feel a fail and a learning experience is just always stepping back into the user. Are they going to understand these terms? How do we simplify it down? We joke about like, write it so my mom understands it, right? And that I think I take to heart, right? Constantly making sure that our communications and our efforts are down to, you don't have to be technical to understand anything I'm asking you, but you still are learning how to keep yourself safe.
Right now, I guess one of my, you want to say a failure or something that I want to get my hands on more and say is more strict access is how guests access a company's environment. Um, a lot of organizations are using, you can say, Teams, a way to share documents or collaborate. But for me, having stricter guest access is huge. With as soon as you allow, I know you can control with your organization if you allow the guest access, but I wish within the environment we in general we have, having a grasp or more strict access on how guest access your tenant without being able to have any open vulnerabilities to access your stuff. That's one of the ones that I'm working on. As far as on my list, but another one that and I think I mentioned it to you here is the zero trust policy. That's something that I've been reading a lot, been hearing as far as different type of groups that I join as far as cybersecurity members, and that for me that's something that I want for our organization to eventually look at and say, this is it. Like no matter if the machine's here, no matter the machine is within our network, we're going to treat it as it's going to treat it just as if it was an external device. And that's another one that I'm planning, and I'm being strategic about it, about how it would benefit our environment and organization as a whole. But again, it's one of those where you have to make sure that the buy-in, everyone's in it, and it has to have that mentality. And if I go by myself thinking that, and the rest of the team is like, no, we're not going to approach it like that, it's not going to work. It has to be like a whole, everyone thinking that, okay, we're all going to go in the zero trust environment all together, and this is how we're going to view each particular device, laptops, you name it, mobile devices, anything that connects within our network and from the outside.
I've actually had really fulfilling, conversations take place where people have reached out to me and have let me know certain things that they're concerned about, such as a person who saw an admin password that their supervisor posted in a document that was essentially quite public, for any employee. that they were posting documents on SharePoint that weren't locked down properly. This person didn't want to report it with their name, but they came to me and knew that I would keep their confidence, because that information is important for us to ameliorate the situation. And in no way are we going to punish an employee for coming to us with that info. In fact, I laud employees who are willing to come forward in those type of situations. I had another employee who contacted me who said that many years ago he used his email address, his work email address, on a naughty website, and was now being threatened, and asked me if there was way that I could help him or to give him advice. And the fact that he came to me and trusted me to try to help him with this situation, it just showed me that we were starting to get through to people, so they know that they can come to us and ask us for advice and know that we're going to try to help them solve a problem.
Let's take a moment to introduce a valuable resource that you may not have considered: CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, CISA operates across 10 regions in the United States. They support organizations, especially those in critical infrastructure sectors, with cybersecurity strategy. Joining us today is Mark Vasquez from CISA. He's based in Kansas City, has a background in healthcare and banking, and is now with CISA in the Midwest. Mark, we appreciate you being here. Let's talk about the types of stakeholders that CISA works with and how organizations can engage with the agency.
Sure. So stakeholder could be really anybody. We have a lot of our advisors who work throughout the region, and they set up those relationships with various businesses. It could be anybody from a retailer, it could be a government entity, it could be anything from small business, financial, any of the sectors. A lot of our key sectors are obviously schools that we work with. We try to help them quite a bit, schools and school districts, higher education. We also work a lot with healthcare and organizations, trying to keep them up to speed on what they're doing. But there's a lot of it. Just really depends on our services. We don't like to say they're free. We like to say that they're at no cost, because you've paid for them with your paycheck already. And so we encourage people to go take not only the resources that we provide, but also those that are on our websites, and plagiarize. We encourage people to take them and run with them, and use them to their heart's content, because the government the government funds these things through the tax dollars, and so we want to provide as much for those stakeholders as possible. And so it could really be anybody. And what we do also is we'll try to bring together. We can't obviously be all things to all people, but what we do try to do is bring together sometimes different entities. So if we have like 4 or 5 rural hospitals in an area, we might bring them all together to do one exercise, so that we can help do one exercise and help 5 entities at the same time, things like that.
Mark, share something you've learned in your role there that cyber folks might not think of. What comes to mind?
So specific examples would be when we worked with healthcare entities in the past, some of the things that have come up around cyber insurance. So one of the things that was mind blowing to me was last year in an exercise, we had a legal person who was at the very end said, "I've got something for you." He said, "I recently found out that when, let's say you're having you have a high profile individual who's having some sort of surgery with the brand new surgical arm, that's this high tech thing that they're using at a surgical or in a surgical suite of a hospital. Well, during this, some bad actor gets wind of that and puts some sort of ransomware in there and makes it so it's inoperable. So it either hurts or possibly even kills the patient. Well, then you have to sort out, not only this is a PR nightmare because it's somebody high profile, but in addition to that, cyber insurance is going to begin asking a lot of questions, and they're going to say, well, hold on a second. This happened whenever you were doing a procedure, so that's malpractice. That's not us. Malpractice insurance is then going to say, well, that happened because of a ransomware attack, so that's not us. And then you're going to have to sit in this and wait to see who wins and if they're going to pay for everything. And so that was very mind blowing to us, because we'd never even thought of something like that. Things like that have come out. Another thing that comes out is that I like to ask, first off, whose responsibility is information security? And sometimes you'll get some turning heads, but usually you'll get people who will say it's everybody's responsibility, which is true. And then the final thing is that I wait till the very end of exercises and I'll say, but by the way, who's laddering up all this stuff? Who's keeping track of all these things? Because we're going to have to report this to somebody. And then there's a lot of looking around. Gosh, yeah, we'll have to have somebody who'll have to be a point person who will need to be taking in not only what the information security team is getting, but also what contracts is getting, what communications is getting, what all of these other entities are getting at the same time. Because depending on the organization, there's going to be some regulatory bodies that they may have to also provide reporting to. And so thinking about all those things holistically, another big thing that comes out is we spent so much time during the pandemic proving to everyone that we could do everything electronically, we could do everything online. And now what we're finding is that when electronics go down, do we have those directories? Do we have those plans and procedures on paper? Do we have them trained on? Do we have them in a place where everybody knows where they are? In addition, especially with healthcare facilities, when we have to go back to manual charting, does everyone read cursive? I like to joke around that my son is 17. He has no idea what a signature is. He went to write his name once and he said J, and I said, that's not how that's supposed to look. You need to have a signature. And so that then correlates with, how much granular training do we have to get? And so some of these entities, it's very eye-opening to see what comes out of an exercise, but also what they're going to do with it next.
So I have to ask this on a personal level. Tell us a story. You live cybersecurity, you have a family, you have a computer. I'm sure something has come up that put your skills to the test at home.
I can tell you my son was social engineered, and it was both hilarious to me, but very traumatic to him, as you've probably seen from other students who are faced with. He got social engineered on Snapchat. He was sending pictures back and forth with people, and he ended up sending pictures to what he thought was this person on Snapchat, and the person said, well, I have these pictures now, and I'm going to send them to everybody in your contact list and everybody in my contact list, and everybody's going to know what you sent me if you don't send me the gratuitous gift cards. So my son, who's very introverted, came running downstairs on a Saturday night and said to me, I've done something terrible. I've done something terrible. And he's not very animated like that. So I said, what's going on? What's going on? Eventually got out of him what was going on. I said, well, this is amazing. I said, this is exciting. He goes, you're not mad? And I said, well, we'll get to that here in a minute. We will get to that. But first, he said, well, what are we supposed to do? And I said, we do this. So I went through the motions. So I screenshotted everything. I reported it to Snapchat. I blocked that person and I gave him his phone back. And he said, but they're going to send it. I said, son, you're not special. I know you'd love to think that you are, but you're not special. And they're doing this to 10,000 other people at the same time. And now you've just fallen off the map. So they're just going to go after other people now. And he said, but what if? And I said, here's the thing. If in 5, 10, 15 days, this actually comes to fruition and they actually send those pictures out and you find that your life is ending, I'll give you $1 million. How about that? I'll just give you $1 million.
All right, Mark, thank you. Check out CISA at cisa.gov and check out the Shields Up section. It has a lot of resources that can be valuable as a cybersecurity professional to your organization and to your family. For many years, I hosted cybersecurity summits across the country, speaking to audiences of hundreds of CISOs. And one message that I heard all the time is that success in cybersecurity always comes down to the basic. There's new technology, there's evolving regulations, there are shiny things, all of them are important, but the core priority remains the same. So, Dustin Meadows, it sounds like we're still focused on the biggest attack surface and the most common way of breaching it. Would you agree?
That has not changed one bit. I think phishing is still number one. A lack of user awareness, and in fact, just this morning on LinkedIn, somebody had kind of thrown a poll out there of, do you punish your users for clicking on a phishing message? And overwhelmingly, the answer is no. I've done it, you've done it, we've all done it. It's I don't want to call it a failure, but it's it kind of is a failure on us to have not taught our users. I hate to say it this way, but it's something that I've always known for you. Don't click shit. I mean, I have a sticker that I would give out to people. It just says, don't click shit, because that's the truth. You take a moment, look at it and go, hold on, let me see here, then follow through.
The right phishing email on any day can catch anyone. There have been studies that show that nobody's immune to social engineering or being tricked. And it doesn't matter if you're a PhD or if you haven't graduated high school. The level of education has nothing to do with it. The only thing the level of education has to do with is the bait. People with a PhD bite on different bait than people that don't have their GED. It's just bait. There's no difference in susceptibility. So what we need to do is not focus on what happens before the click, but what happens after. If you click, do you feel like you need to hide it? Or, because you're going to get in trouble, because your job might be in jeopardy, because you're afraid of how people are going to think about you? Or do we need to normalize uh, this this kind of destigmatize clicking on stuff and making not mistakes, but being victimized? We don't do that with anything else. If your home is broken into, we don't make fun of people. If your car is broken into, that's not your fault. If you're tricked into doing something that you knew wasn't a good choice, then that shouldn't be on you. We should focus on, what did you do after that? After you realized something had gone wrong, did you take the next step, which is responsible?
I've fallen for phishing scams. I've done the dumb things that you're embarrassed to tell me about. I've done them all. I've learned from them. Let me help you understand how we got here. What the attacker used, how they tricked you, and help them understand that, so that when it comes again, not only will they take a better look at it, but they might tell the person next to them, "Hey, whoa, don't click on that, and let me show you why." I think the users are definitely our first line of defense.
Certainly, there are some excellent phishing simulation programs out there like KnowBe4 and Proofpoint that test employees' awareness. I'd like to share two approaches that AwareForce uses to explain phishing to employees, and these might give you some ideas. Our focus is on creating content that employees actually want to read. We make it topical, interactive, and easy to understand. In our bi-monthly newsletters, this is one thing we use. It's a slider bar feature that employees can control themselves. They see what a phishing email looked like when it got there, and then they slide over to reveal the clues that identify it as a phishing attempt. Some clients use this tool to reinforce lessons from last month's phishing simulation, and some of them even include statistics showing how well employees performed in spotting phishing attempts. Another thing we do that's been well received is short form videos that explain the latest phishing and vishing stuff out there. We brand the content for each client because we want their cyber team to be the heroes who are viewed by employees as protecting them and their families. The goal here is to establish a safe channel of communications. So here's an example. This phishing video is branded for Chicago Public Schools. 10 billion emails are sent every day. 3 billion are phishing emails, often designed to steal your money. Here are 3 examples. The PayPal scam. Now, this email is from PayPal, but PayPal doesn't know what's going on. The sender says you owe money, or that a payment will be taken from your bank account unless you call now and stop it. Ignore the email. The scammers try to scare you into calling and giving them information about your bank account. Don't. Next, the Venmo scam. Someone wires you money you didn't expect, or sends a little extra money for something you're selling. Then they ask you to refund it. Don't. Alert Venmo. By the way, on your Venmo app, take a minute and go to Settings and make your account private instead of public, so scammers can't see it. Finally, be suspicious of an email that links to a Google Doc, like this one. Here's an urgent email about a bank account. If you click on the Google Doc, you'll be taken to what looks like a real bank account, including this message about being extra safe. And then to a login page that looks just like the bank's. Enter your credentials, and the scammer will be able to take over your real bank account. Oh, by the way, closely look at this web address. That's the letter Q. It doesn't belong there. Protect yourself from all this. Turn on two-factor authentication for your bank account. Scammers are coming up with new schemes all the time. These are 3 of the latest. Let's talk about the future of AI. 2 years ago, ChatGPT 3.5 launched and quickly gained massive popularity, but it also raised challenges, like employees inadvertently uploading confidential data into the language model. So, how does AI fit into your plans for the upcoming year? Anna?
I think AI is a huge one, but honestly, I think AI is dependent on culture and how you are embracing it, what your risk tolerances and internal policies are. It's definitely something that I think everyone should be aware of. I have colleagues at other companies that it's not being used at all. So, they don't have to worry about it. And so it's interesting just to have conversations around like how I use it internally and how I help do things faster. Um, but yes, it's a huge, huge initiative just in terms of recognition of how to use it. And honestly, to get people to want to use it.
Unfortunately, in my current role, I'm not as much on the defense side as I was before, but putting my defense hat on, you know, I think that the chat GPT and the large language models like that have really upped the attacker's game, because we used to say, look for the misspellings, look for the bad grammar, look for that kind of stuff. And now you've got, entire GPTs, LLMs that are out there specifically for attackers to be able to recraft their messaging to go, I want to send a phishing message that looks like this, that is sent to this person, and it'll give them, proper grammar, proper spacing, clear text to just copy paste in. So I think that is a huge threat. I think that that's just going to get worse, and I don't know um, how to really defend against that programmatically. I mean, I know how to defend against it from a people person, but programmatically, I don't know how would we write signatures to capture a message that looks just like a message from a vendor or just like a message from an external client.
Just thinking around, thinking about things like chat GPT regulation, that I think it's really important that organizations are building governance that is ready to respond to new and emerging technologies, and that you're not changing the way that you do work. You're still following all the same governance and protocol and, data risk guidelines that you put in place, but that you're building those in a way that new technologies that come to the forefront just fall in line. And it's a checkbox that you're putting on. Hey, are we hiring a vendor? Awesome. Does their third party product that we're including, does it have AI integrated into it? Great, check the box. Let's make sure we've looked at, are we training a model? Are we doing these pieces? And we start to look at governance that way across the board, that any new technology that comes along, we're not recreating the wheel and how do we deal with the new technology and keeping our population safe, but we're applying all the same practices to whatever that new technology is. And in a big company, like think about, we sign contracts that are 3, 4, 5 years long. Well, if I have a contract in place for a software product that I signed 5 years ago, think of what has changed in that product regarding generative AI over the last 5 years.
The last 5 months.
The last 5 months, exactly. So we, it is complicated. It's something that you constantly need to stay on top of.
Many of us remember a time when employees barely understood what we did in cybersecurity. We didn't have a seat at the management table, didn't have much of a budget, and now things have changed. Cybersecurity leadership in some organizations even has direct access to the board. I know of one case where the CISO presents to the board without any management present. So, with this increased visibility, we've learned a lot about what works, and we'd like to invite our guests to share some of their best practices. Cassie, would you like to start? What's an idea that you can pass along?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the most important thing I think is just making content that is easily digestible by anyone. So if my older aunt or my grandma were to read one of my posts that I have, or how I'm explaining things, it should be simple. It shouldn't be too technical where they can't understand it. There shouldn't be jargon. There shouldn't be too much technicality unless that's where they're at. But it's just meeting the person where they're at, so that way they can understand it and apply it.
I think a lot of times we continue to maybe not share stories because we feel, how could I be so silly? But again, I think it just comes back to we're all human and we have more information about us out there than ever before. And we put it out there. We don't think, how could somebody actually go and learn about us, buy that information, and then maybe come back and give something that's well placed.
most recently, honestly, this just happened last week. I saw someone's external email banner and it was like great. I can't even remember whose was it. It was part of this community. And it said something like an acronym for be the security seal. And it spelled out like what to look for in the email. And so instead of just having this vague banner that says, hey, watch out for this email, it's coming from an external sender, I was like, hey, let's make this an internal thing. Like, let's use it for our organization. Let's make this better because right now it's just saying, watch out for our emails. And how can we make that better? Just by not even using exactly what this other company did, but just taking that idea and making it however my organization wants it to be. So that was just a week ago.
We have a quarterly phishing competition. We do it about 3 times a year called the Elite Pro Phishing. Last time we had 5,200 participants for the competition. What we learned was when we started the competition, and it's all with our enterprise defenders. So when you join the enterprise defenders, you're basically signing up to get the most evil phishing emails. We want to get their approval when you want to spoof a manager or spoof HR. So that there's no negative, and they want it to be as scary and as realistic or unrealistic as possible, rather. They just want to see the different examples of how creative we can get. But what we notice when you put all of those users on social media, when you look at your traditional champion, I've had done champions programs before. Champions is usually limited. They think of themselves as cybersecurity experts. And sometimes they have the torch and pitchfork approach, if you've seen the movie Shrek. Woe to those who click on a link. For us, it's okay if you click on a link, just report it to the SOC. We tell that in our communications, we tell that multiple times. So essentially, our SOC offers customer service. So what happens when your SOC offers customer service? For our phishing competition, people will one person will post, oh, that was a tough one. I clicked on it. And then somebody else will post, that's okay. We reported it for you. There's that positive vulnerabilities and actual strength. What we found out, there was one particular use, I still remember this, where after we stopped the first phishing competition. The first phishing competition ended, it was for October Cyber Awareness Month. My plan was to close the Teams channel because at that time, 1,800 users was a lot. I'm always engaging on social media, but I didn't think it would continue. They wanted to stay. They liked it. So then we invited our SOC onto the channel as well, because what we saw was people started reporting more real phishing emails, and they were posting the phishing emails, the confirmation, hey, this was a phishing email. We also, one user in particular, he said, I clicked on a real phishing email, but the SOC was so helpful. And that was a really powerful message because it gives people the confidence that, hey, I can do whatever I want. I can confidently, because this is during the pandemic, I can confidently click on the link knowing that if something is wrong, I can call the SOC. They will take care of me.
All right, last topic. Let's get personal. We'd love to hear what steps you take to protect your kids and your parents online. For example, I'm at Target. My mom calls. It's an urgent call. She says, what do I do? The message on my computer says I have a virus and I need to call the number on the screen so that they can fix it. Mom, we've talked about this before. Let's go around the room and share some advice. Karen McPhee, how about you? What's your approach?
When we're moving so fast today, it's really to take that, I think, that step back and that mindfulness, which it sounds crazy in cyber to do, but I think one of my greatest tips out for people, I just did some talks on digital wellness and partnered with some of my peers to make sure that people are taking that pause before they're actioning. Because when we look at that urgency, you want to make sure that you're addressing things so fast, in that you can get caught. And sometimes I instill, call a friend or take pause and wait 24 hours before you go back to something. And especially if I'm on my mobile device, when I'm on my mobile device, I want to make sure that I am taking that really, I think that pause or that second look at things, because we're on the go. We may not be fully vested. It's a small screen. It's something that allows us to work and be productive and in a great way and get things done while we're on the move, especially in our busy lives. But I think one of the things with our mobile is, if it's something that needs something right now, I wait till I get to a spot where I could sit down, focus on it, and then maybe take a look at a bigger screen, like a desktop or anything, just to take that second look at it, especially if it's coming in through email, text.
You have to do your vibe check. So a lot of people have like their own method, wait, which means like, do you know who the person is? Do you know, are they asking you for some ridiculous item? But if you do a vibe check, it's you've gone through the whole entire request, whether it be in text message, email, or over the phone, and you just don't feel right. Like your gut is saying like there's something wrong here. If you're getting that, then you need to step away from it. You need to either report it, you need to ask somebody else about it, you need to maybe contact the person that you think, maybe sent you or maybe called you, and actually see if it's valid.
I think the number one tip that I offer people, and this actually comes from a friend of mine named Nate Long. He says use the law of proactive contact. The police call you and say, there's a warrant out for your arrest. Hang up, call them back. They'll still be there. If the IRS, sends you an email to say that you owe so much in taxes, great. Go to irs.gov and send them a contact. They will either send you something via the mail or you'll be able to access that information in some other way than the person who's contacting you.
I think right now the biggest thing, specifically like with my grandparents and even my parents, chatting with them about the risks of getting those vishing phone calls that are saying and asking for like a ransom for either a grandchild, um, a friend, anything like that. It's something we actually created like a safe word in my family for because with my grandparents getting older and my mom, handling all of that, I wanted to make sure that they would understand the significance of someone calling them and asking for money and hearing, their grandkids crying in the background because deep fakes are getting so good. And, all of this is explained in very layman's terms. Um, but just the biggest tip is inform your family about it because you would hate for them to be the ones who are compromised in a situation like that or think that you're harmed.
I have a password with my kids. Hopefully we'll never have to use it. But in a situation where I can't get to them, uh, you know, there's a question and an answer. And so first a person would have to know what the question is, and then they'd have to know what the answer is. And my kids know it. So like nobody could say, "Hey, your dad told me to come and pick you up," or "Hey, your mom and dad are gonna like meet me over here at this puppy farm and we're gonna have a great time." Like they would know if that person doesn't have the question and the answer, then we didn't do that.
Tried to switch to making sure that the questions I'm using when picking security questions aren't things that someone could just Google search and know about me. Um, and I think it's really paying attention to if I get an alert for a login that doesn't make sense to me, that I'm looking at it right away, not letting it sit. If software needs to be updated, I'm trying to update it immediately as soon as I can. I think of the iPhone. How often are you prompted to update your software and you're like, yeah, I'll do it later. Well, yeah, I'll do it later sometimes turns into a week. There's a reason that we're updating that software quickly. So I think I try to take to heart the things that I'm telling everyone else. But I think really enabling multi-factor authentication everywhere, if everyone would do that, we would solve so many problems.
I always check my accounts. Call it anomaly detection, right? Get into the habit of periodically checking my credit report. I periodically check my financial statements, my banking statements, social media, email accounts, making sure, even though you have multi-factor authentication, just continue to check and making that a habit.
What you want to do is make it harder. You want to take the steps. You want to like, if MFA is freaking you out, do your top accounts. Make sure you have it on your email, because if it's not on your email and somebody gets hold of your email account, the first thing they're going to do is turn it on, and then it's going to be really hard for you to get your email back. And then they go out to your accounts and select forgot password. And where does it send it? To your email. So start by protecting your email and then go around to each one of your accounts. Just when you go to check your bank, make sure it's on, make sure it's working. When you go to do a post on Facebook, just go check it out. Google, how do I check if my Facebook MFA is turned on? And there will be a set of steps.
Well, thank you all for sharing your experiences. Some final words now from Kimberly Kwan of Juniper Networks. KQ, what are your thoughts?
We need to speak up. You know, we're in a day and an age where there are a lot of dangers out there, and you know, people are being attacked in many different ways for many different things. It could be because of who they are or who they love. But I think that we need to speak up and help people protect themselves. A colleague of mine was walking by a woman a couple of weeks ago, and he heard her on the phone, and he could tell that someone was on the phone and trying to convince her to give her banking information. And he stopped her and just said, that person is scamming you, you know, hang up the phone. And you know, a lot of people would have just walked by, but we need to do that. We need to look out for each other.
Thank you all for joining us on this important journey to improve cybersecurity for everybody. Your feedback helps us understand what resonates and where we can make the biggest impact, whether it's at work or in our daily lives. Please take a minute to scan this QR code and complete the short survey. Your response will help us create practical, relatable ways to make cybersecurity a shared responsibility. By working together and by learning from each other, we're building a safer, more informed online community. We sure appreciate your time watching today, your insights, and your commitment to making a difference. And if you'd like to see how organizations across North America are using AwareForce to engage their employees in cyber, send us an email and we'll get you our latest content. Send it to cutrisk@awareforce.com.